Are you
Yes.
ready? Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay. So we would like to welcome you, Brooke, Shaden. We're so excited to talk to you.
Me too.
Our first question was about some of your newer works and how you've started experimenting with mixed media in addition to your photography. We love it, and I just wanted to hear about your thought process and if it was a natural transition for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that like for any artist, you get to a point where you're just bored of what you've been doing because you become an artist because you want to explore and try new things. And I think that the difficulty of becoming a mid-career artist is that you become known for the thing that you started and then you feel trapped by that thing, and it's super frustrating and gratifying at the same time. But then you think, well, how can I surprise myself and shock myself? And so I started to think about elements that were really interesting to me in the moment, and I started to lean more toward abstract imagery instead of more representational imagery like I usually do, where everything is represented as it is in the image. So that led me to paint, because I thought, well, with paint, it can be messy and it can be fun, and I've never done it before. So I actually started by painting on top of glass, and then I would photograph the glass and then overlay that onto an image of myself. And then I actually texted JoAnne about it, and she was like, these are amazing, but are you really painting on your images? And I was like, no, I'm not. And then she was like, oh, I'm kind of bummed. So she was like, just try. And I said, well, don't expect anything because I have no idea how to paint. And she was like, that's a lie, just do it anyway. And I was like, okay. And so the next day I went out and I got oil paints, and I had like a crash course from the local art store about like how to put paint on something. And the general consensus was like, just try. So I just tried, and it was super fun. And I ended up sending that to you guys, which was great. So I'm now on to my second ever fully mixed media piece, where I'm working on watercolor now. So I'm just going to try like different mediums.
Do you think that your process has changed with this new mixed media integration?
Yes.
And how has it changed? Do you plan it? Is it kind of organic?
Yeah, it's so much more organic. Like, I am such an anxious, structured person in every part of my life. And so I went into it the first time thinking, okay, the paint's going to go here and it's going to look just like this. And I had like a little pencil outline of like where it was going to go. And then immediately realized that's not going to work. Like, first of all, I don't have the skill with paint to say like, I'm a painter, I know exactly what I'm doing and like where the paint's going to go. And then I realized that it was just more fun if I let the concept build on itself as I went. So for example, the first mixed media piece that I did, I knew that I wanted this figure to have like a red crown of sorts on her head, but I had no idea what shape that would be, or how big or little it would be, or how representational or abstract it would be. So I just kind of let it go. And that's been the most freeing thing ever in my art, because it's allowing me to be more free in my life too. Like to say, you know what, I don't always have to have a plan, but I have to trust in myself enough to know that I will get to a place where it's still meaningful.
That's so neat. I mean, it takes a lot of courage too, because like you said, having done it for so long a certain way, and to really just bring something into your world that's so new and different.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. And I think that it's what's missing for a lot of people is that willingness to explore and to follow your curiosity, because we get so worried, especially on the business side of things. Like if you don't do exactly what your collectors expect of you or your galleries expect of you, then you're gone. Like they're going to drop you. Nobody's going to want it anymore. But to me, the opposite is true. Like people are looking for innovation, not stagnation.
Mm-hmm.
So many people say that your photographs look like paintings. So I think the addition of paint on it is like especially exciting.
Yeah, you know what? It's like the funniest thing, because when I started photography, I had very few ideas of what I was doing. But one of like the three things that I knew is that I wanted to make painterly images. And I was really passionate about that. And I printed my whole first series that I ever made on canvas so that I could like trick people. And so it's really funny that it's taken me like 11 years to get to the point where finally I'm actually putting paint on my images, when that was my only goal to begin with, was to make painterly images. So it's really kind of ridiculous, but nice.
People are always so amazed by your editing, how you do it and how it's
Yeah.
possible. And I know you post a lot of it online and you're very open about your process, but could you walk us through like what a piece entails from when you come up with the concept to when you're done? How much does it vary and how do your perceptions of it evolve as you're working on the piece?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my editing process is actually a little bit funny, and I think that a lot of people are fascinated with it because it's it's kind of the opposite of what most photographers do. Like if you ever go to a photography class about here's how you edit, here's how you use Photoshop, it's always like here are steps 1 through 10 and this is how you use these steps. For me, I think of photography just like I would think of painting, where I think of it like, okay, I've got like this blank canvas. Now, where does the light go? Where does the color go? Where are the shapes? And I really break it down into those basic component parts. Instead of seeing the image that I have in front of me as something that I'm just going to tweak, I think of it as something that could turn into anything. So that's how I go about editing. And when I come up with the idea, it usually doesn't really change very much. I mean, the scale of it might change because like I try to sketch everything and I'm terrible at it. So usually it doesn't look like my sketches, but I do my best. So usually I know everything from the composition to the color palette to the lighting. Like it's usually pretty well wrapped up before I even start shooting. But then once I do get into editing, it's always, there's always this moment where there's the compositing, which is putting all the individual components together. And then there's like the color light portion of the edit, which is the best thing in the world. And I spend, an average edit will take me like 2 to 5 hours, depending on the image. And sometimes way more, like, you know, sometimes upwards of 100 hours if it's really crazy. But on average 2 to 5 hours, and I usually only spend like 30 minutes putting it together, and then I spend hours just tweaking the lighting and the color obsessively, to the point where I'll ask people, can you see this difference? And they're like, no, like I don't know what you're even doing right now because there's no difference, but I see it. So that's my favorite part of editing.
Also wanted to ask you, well, really have you share some of your wisdom, because you know, a lot of people see that there's a lot of darkness and a lot of grief within your themes of your images, but there's this underlying element of hope and of optimism. And how do you get there? How do you teach people to see the beauty within the darkness?
Well, this is my favorite topic in the world because I have always naturally seen a lot of beauty in dark things, and I've never totally grasped why that is, except that I think that we all have things in our life that happen and that you understand or interpret differently than the people around you. And that happens to everybody with something in your life. And it could be something small or something big. And for me, I remember it was when my cat died when I was 11. And that was like this defining moment in my life where I was like really heartbroken. It was devastating to me, but I just remember feeling like so calm and so peaceful and thinking like, this is so beautiful to feel her go limp in my arms when she died. And then it's not like when I was 11, I was like, that was a profound moment and I'm going to like take this as inspiration into my adulthood. But, you know, ruminating on experiences like that, I look back and I'm like, probably most 11-year-olds aren't thinking that when their cat dies in their arms, you know, and like you start to look in hindsight at these moments. And so I started looking at those moments and thinking, I find natural beauty in death and darkness and disturbing things. Why is that? And I realized that I may never fully answer that question of why, but I can try to show other people what I see in the way that I see it. So my work has always come from that place of saying, this is going to be disturbing and dark, and you might not enjoy looking at it at first, but now take it one step further and ask yourself why you feel that way. And that's what I try to do.
Yes, I think that's what's so great about your photography is that you're so raw, you're so candid, you're so quick to be vulnerable, which really elicits emotions for people. And that's what I know I love about art, is having that emotional experience. And I think it's so nice and freeing for other people to see your work, because they too feel that they can have those emotions and responses.
Exactly. It's like, I think that, I became an artist 11 years ago, and largely have been like, I don't know if this is the right term, but you could say like a social media artist, where I'm sharing my work from day one on the internet. And I know that not all artists can say that. Maybe they haven't shared their work, or they came from a time where it wasn't normal to share your work to a large audience. So I've always come at art from this place of recognizing that the general public wants art to be sterile. Like, people want things to be comfortable and to be nice to look at. And I've always just felt this natural rebellion against that. Like, I don't want my art to be sterile. I want it to be controversial. I want it to awaken something in you. And I've gone through a lot of periods up and down in my career where I've given into that. And I've said, you know what? Okay, I want to be liked. I don't want to be criticized anymore. I want this, I want that. And I've created pretty pictures and then felt so empty afterwards. And I feel like now I'm at a point in my life where I understand my darkness and why I love that. And I'm doubling down on not being a sterile artist anymore.
It's nice. You're a voice for so many different types of people, and you really promote inclusivity, I guess.
Yes, it's the biggest thing to me. I've been thinking so much about this because I feel like I just said, like, sharing my work online and having this audience, this core audience that has looked at it for the past decade. It's like there comes a point where you create something, you put it out there, whether that's to a gallery, to the internet, whatever. And it gets so boring to be like, okay, here's a new piece. Okay, it's released. Here's a new piece. Now it's released. And for me, there has to be that third step of, I make a piece, I release it. Now let's have a dialogue about it. And I think that willingness to have a dialogue is what makes people feel understood. It's not even so much just the image itself, but, oh, you want me to talk about how I interact with it? Sure, why not? And it's a good feeling.
JoAnne's coming in.
Oh, yay!
Come in.
I'm mascara for today. So the piece we just sold was Fragile. It was a young couple, and she goes, gosh, that looks so fragile. And I go, that's the title. It was crazy.
Thing.
That is one of my all-time favorite pieces of yours, because I know it's very personal for you.
It is. Yeah. When I made that piece, it was part of a series called Fourth Wall. And it was one of the few self-portraits that I decided to do for that particular series, which normally I do all self-portraits, but for this series, I thought I'm only going to do a couple. And the whole series was about the things that we feel inside that we don't feel like we can tell other people. So I thought, well, I might as well dig deep and find that thing that I feel like I'm too embarrassed to tell other people, or I'm ashamed of. And the one that I was so excited to create was Fragile, because all my life, people have always called me fragile. They would always say, you're so little, you're so, you just look so fragile. And then I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia and some issues. And then even more people were like, oh, don't touch her, don't hurt her. And it made me so upset, because I felt like I was growing into this identity of being fragile, because I was diagnosed when I was 13 years old. So I felt that I internalized this, this way that other people saw me as being less than because of health issues or whatever. And I made that piece right at a time when I decided that those narratives that I've been telling myself had to be reversed. And I thought this would be the best way to do it, to create this image with these eggshells, and where I'm sort of laying there looking fragile, and yet really the image is about breaking free of that narrative that I'd always told myself, which I hope all the images in the series depict.
Yeah, it's a good piece. I'm very excited.
I love that one. It was my favorite from the series.
And so much love.
You, Brooke, Shaden, thank you so much for your time today, and we love you so much.
Oh, I love you all too so much. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.